All right, readers, we're back for another session of DRABS. That stands for Dad Reads a Bedtime Story. So I'm here tonight bringing back Encyclopedia Brown Gets His Man. We're going to go ahead and start with the next chapter in this one, which is called The Case of Bugs Meany, Detective. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Whenever Encyclopedia crossed his path, Bugs Meany burned with a single desire. It was to fill Encyclopedia's mouth with a fist. But Bugs never swung a blow. Every time he felt like it, his jaw ached, for he remembered the detective's junior partner, Sally Kimball. Sally was the prettiest girl in 5th grade. She was also the best athlete. The first time she had seen Bugs, he was bullying a Cub Scout. Sally had jumped off her bike. She had put her left into Bugs' face, rap, tap, rap. Then her right had gone whammo. After the first punch, Bugs had seen red. After 10 punches, he had seen stars. Bugs is like a lumpy mattress, warned Encyclopedia. He won't rest until he gets even. He's just a big bully, said Sally. He can't match your fast brain work. But next morning, Sally was worried. Look what was under my front door. She handed Encyclopedia a business card. It read, Tigers, Inc., Private Detectives, Staff of Experts, 20 cents a day plus expenses, office behind Sweeney's Body Shop. Bugs is out to steal your customers, said Sally angrily. He's charging a nickel less. Bugs can't charge anything till he gets a case, replied Encyclopedia. He has a case, said Sally. Mario Martinelli hired him to find his violin. Encyclopedia gasped. Golly, Mario has been practicing hard for the Summer Symphony Orchestra. Tryouts are tomorrow. Bugs will never find the violin in time. His experts couldn't find a clam in a sand pail, said Sally. If we don't help Mario, he won't make the orchestra. Come on. Encyclopedia agreed reluctantly. He reached for his bike. Bugs has every right to complain if we butt in, he said. As the partners neared Mario's house, they could not believe their eyes. Tigers were crawling over the lawn, peering through magnifying glasses for clues. Bugs was dusting fingerprint powder on her windowsill. Mario, a slender boy of 11, watched uneasily. No fingerprints here, called Bugs. The thief wiped the windowsill clean. We're up against a master criminal. Won't you be able to find my violin? Asked Mario. Don't worry, Maestro. I'm a regular bloodhound, said Bugs. I'm on to something right now. He grinned mysteriously. The grin vanished as he spied Encyclopedia and Sally. Hey, you Tigers, he shouted. Let's go. This place is getting crowded with amateurs. After the Tigers had trooped off, Encyclopedia asked Mario about the theft. Someone climbed through my open bedroom window last night and stole the violin, answered Mario. Why did you hire Bugs Meany? Asked Sally. He came by early this morning. He was passing out his business card, said Mario. I told him all about the violin. I said my mother had already telephoned the police. Bugs insisted he was smarter than any policeman. All those Tigers working for 20 cents, mused Sally. Something is fishy. Oh, there's a $10 reward, said Mario. Bugs told my mother we would have a better chance of getting the violin back if she offered a reward. That no good, Bugs, cried Sally. I'll bet anything he stole the violin himself. If he did, I'll surely get it back, said Mario hopefully. The three children sat down on the porch. There was nothing to do but wait for Bugs to return with the stolen violin and claim the reward. An hour later, the Tigers paraded back. Sure enough, Bugs was carrying the violin. Man, oh man, he sang. I guess you now know who the greatest detective in Idaville. The rest of the Tigers threw up their arms and cheered like mad. Bugs, Bugs, Bugs. While certain private detectives were sitting around helpless, I was using my head, said Bugs. To find stolen goods, you have to think like a thief. You've had enough practice, snapped Sally. Before Bugs could take up a fighting stance, Encyclopedia spoke up. How did you find the violin, Bugs? I'll show you, said Bugs, relieved at not having to defend himself against Sally. They all walked to the woods past Rolling Road. I figured some kid had swiped the violin, hoping to collect a reward for its safe return, said Bugs. A grown-up thief would have stolen the silverware instead. That makes sense, said Mario. The thief couldn't take the stolen violin home, went on Bugs, and if he wanted a reward, he had to hide it where it wouldn't get damaged. A tree seemed like a good place. That's exactly where I saw it, up in the top of that one. Encyclopedia looked at the tree to which Bugs had pointed. But you can't see to the top, he said. The leaves are too thick. You can't? Well, why a squirrel helped me, stammered Bugs. Yeah, this squirrel was on the trunk. halfway between the ground and the lowest branch. Something made it nervous. It backed down slowly, reached the ground, and raced away. Then you climbed the tree to see why the squirrel acted so strangely, said Encyclopedia, and lo, there was the violin. Right. You'll be a detective yet, said Bugs. Now, pardon me while I go and collect the reward. There is no reward for liars, retorted Encyclopedia. Why didn't Encyclopedia believe Bugs? All right, so the solution for this one is Bugs claimed that it was strange action of the squirrel which led to his finding the violin. The squirrel, said Bugs, backed down slowly from the tree. That was Bugs' lie. Squirrels never back down a tree. They always come down a tree head first. Told this fact, Bugs admitted to stealing the violin. Not only didn't Bugs get the expected reward of $10, he had to return Mario's 20 cents. And that night he closed his detective business for good. All right. So that one was a little bit short from the Encyclopedia Brown book. Let's go ahead and keep it up and run through one more story. The next chapter is called The Case of the Underwater Car. This one looks good. All right. When Encyclopedia and his pals went camping overnight in the state park, they had a rule. Never take Benny Breslin along. Everyone liked Benny during the day. At night, Benny became a public enemy by climbing into bed. He closed his eyes, opened his mouth, and sounded his nose. His snoring shook garage doors up and down the street. You should take Benny with you on this trip, said Encyclopedia's mother. The last time we took Benny camping, replied Encyclopedia, the governor closed the state park for 2 days. It was true. Benny's snores had awakened other campers. Frightened, they had reported a wild animal in the area. The park had been closed for 2 days while state troopers hunted a bear. Benny's mother brought him a strap, said Mrs. Brown. It fits under his nose. He sleeps very quietly now. Quietly, thought Encyclopedia, as an elephant choking to death. Nevertheless, he agreed to take Benny. He could not say no after his mother gave him a box of cotton. You can stuff your ears, said Miss Brown. There's enough for everyone. After lunch, Encyclopedia biked down to Mill Creek. Benny Breslin was already there, and so were the other boys of the gang. Chris Stewart, Fangs Liverite, Pinky Plummer, Herb Stein, and Billy and Jody Turner. They reached the state park 2 hours later. Most of the best camping sites were taken. The only good spot left was on a small hill overlooking a bend in the dirt road. Beyond the dirt road and about 40 feet below it was the ocean. The boys unpacked their bicycles, pitched their tents, and went down to the ocean with their fishing poles. By nightfall, no one except Benny had hooked any fish big enough to keep. Benny had caught 7 beauties. Fish are great music lovers, explained Benny. Just sing them a scale. Ah. He had caught 3 fish humming, the Muffin Man, and 4 with Rockabye Baby. However, Encyclopedia noticed Benny was the only boy using shrimp, not worms, for bait. It has to be the bait, thought Encyclopedia. Benny's singing is even worse than his snoring. Charlie Stewart got a fire blazing, and Pinky Plummer fried the fish. After eating, the boys sat around the fire talking baseball for 3 hours. Then they turned in. Encyclopedia had Benny for a tent mate. Benny lay down in his bedroll, barefaced. Haven't you forgotten something? Asked Encyclopedia, horrified. My strap, cried Benny, filling his nose. I left my strap at home. Well, it doesn't matter, said Encyclopedia bravely. He did not want to hurt Benny's feelings by passing out the cotton before Benny was asleep. In no time at all, Benny began to snore for all he was worth. Encyclopedia opened the box of cotton and gave some to each boy. They plugged their ears, but it didn't help. Looks like a long night, moaned Charlie Stewart. Benny's giving it both nostrils. Encyclopedia lay down with his ear next to Benny's ear. He reasoned that he was thus as far from the terrible snorts, sneezes, and rasps as Benny himself, and Benny was gloriously asleep. Reason, however, was no match for Benny's nose. After half a minute, Encyclopedia squirmed to the far side of the tent and groaned quietly. One by one, boys fell asleep from sheer weariness. By 2 o'clock in the morning, Encyclopedia's ears felt black and blue. He pocketed his flashlight and went out for a walk in the cool night air. As he reached the dirt road, a car suddenly appeared. It moved slowly. Encyclopedia stopped and observed the car from behind a tree. The road curved, but the car continued straight on. The driver jumped out as the car crashed through the railing. He watched the car roll toward the ocean. Then he smoothed the place in the dirt and lay down. "Help!" he hollered. "Help! My back! Somebody help me!" Several campers rushed from the woods and crowded around him. Encyclopedia walked to the point where the car had gone off the road and flashed his light down the rocky slope. The car had stopped halfway down between the road and the ocean. It rested on its top, a complete wreck. About the only things undamaged were the four worn-out tires. They still spun in the air. All at once, the rocks beneath the car gave way. The car slid into the water and disappeared beneath the surface. "The driver's name is Matthew Starr," said Chief Brown at dinner that evening. "He claims he fell asleep at the wheel and woke up just in time to escape going off the road with the car." "I told you what really happened," protested Encyclopedia. "You were the only witness," said Chief Brown. "Mr. Starr's lawyers will say it was dark and that you were not fully awake." "Somebody ought to shove his lawyer into a pup tent with Benny Breslin," muttered Encyclopedia. "The car was brand new and cost $6,000, said Chief Brown. "Mr. Starr wants the insurance company to pay him for it, but more importantly, he says he hurt his back in the accident and can't work anymore." "A doctor can prove he's faking the injury," said Encyclopedia. "I'm afraid not," said Chief Brown. "Bad backs are a kind of injury that can't be disproved. Mr. Starr has a big policy with the insurance company. It will pay him money each month for the rest of his life if he can't work." "The insurance company wants you to prove that he wrecked his car on purpose. Then the insurance company won't have to pay him anything. Is that right?" asked Encyclopedia. "Yes," replied Chief Brown, "but we can't get heavy machinery onto the dirt road to pull the car out of the ocean. Even if we could, I don't know what we would find to prove Mr. Starr wrecked his car on purpose." "I know," said Encyclopedia. What was it that Encyclopedia had seen? Encyclopedia had seen four worn-out tires on Mr. Starr's car. The car, however, was brand new. Mr. Starr had outsmarted himself. He had removed the new tires in order to sell them. Then he had put the old tires on the car and wrecked it. He had chosen a spot where the car could not be recovered from the ocean. He thought no one would find out, but he had not counted on Encyclopedia. Acting on Encyclopedia's information, Chief Brown had divers bring up the old tires. When he saw them, Mr. Starr confessed. All right. That is the end of that chapter. Next up is the case of the whistling ghost, but we'll go ahead and save that for next time. Thank you guys for joining us tonight on Dad Reads a Bedtime Story. Can't wait to see you guys tomorrow.